Hi everyone, it's Ren here. Should I say it's young Ren here at the moment. I'm re-experiencing some kind of rejuvenated period in my life, but that's not going to be for long because I'm very much a beard-focused man. Still, it's nice to enjoy this bit of rejuvenation. It's like a new departure, which will correspond, roughly speaking, to my departure for Ireland next Thursday. So you're talking 4 days time. 4 days time, I'll be on a plane to Ireland, which really is exciting for me. I'm going to be reconnecting with a lot of friends. I'm going to be reconnecting with a city that I adore, probably my favorite city on earth. Because I'm not particularly attached to Marseille, which is actually not my home city. You know, I'm from a little hometown. My hometown is only half an hour from Marseille, but it's not quite Marseille. And Marseille is a place that I have a close connection to, but it's not the same as Dublin. Anyway, I'm looking forward to that. It's probably going to be a period during which I don't make as many videos. I'll try to make videos still, and I'm sure I will, but the settings will be interesting because I'll be shooting from various spots in Dublin, I guess. Probably mostly the spots where I stay, but it might be cool as well to try to convince some of my friends to make a video together, which, I think I will convince some of them. I think some of them I will certainly not convince, like the hardcore INFPs among my Irish friends, and there are quite a few. I doubt that I'll manage to convince them, but I knew a few like ENTPs, and one person who got INFP, but I think she might be an INFJ, and I'm gonna try to make her like do a video with me, and maybe we can try to see together what people think, because I used to think she was an INFP, even potentially an ISFP, but upon closer inspection and based on her results, she is an N, I think. I just lazily assumed that because she's a jeweler, she was more likely to be a sensor, which perhaps is the case. Perhaps people who are, professionals in jeweling are more likely to be sensors, but that doesn't mean that they're all sensors by any stretch of the imagination. And she's an intuitive, for sure. Now that I think about it, but I'm not even sure that she is an INFP. I'm not sure she's a P-type. She identifies, she doesn't have a close relationship with MBTI, but she would identify as a P-type. I'm not so sure. So we'll see if she displays FE as I think she does. But guess what? This is not even supposed to be the topic of this video. I wanted to tackle the topic of like types that I feel a particular kinship with, given that I made a video recently on how the INFJ type is is conceivable as having at least traits in common with every other type. Maybe things get a little stretched out when we go into ESTJ territory, or when we go into, I don't know, ESFP territory. But at the same time, there are lots of possible linkages that can be made, and I try to, rather than portray them in detail, to provide little snippets of what they could be. But beside that, there's potential for an even more complex picture, which is that, rather than emphasizing what an INFJ can have as traits in common with other types, so say like an immediate manifestation of kindness with the ISFJ, or a questioning behavior in common with the ENTP, or social awareness in common with the ESFJ, or these things. To try to look at how there can be different types of INFJ, many different types of INFJ, which is a topic that I've covered numerous times on this channel. But to try to understand how come there are different types of INFJ, and how do those different types relate to the other types. Because it's possible to imagine that, again, trying not to think too much in terms of the functions, because I think that I have covered a bit of ground with regards to the descriptions of the functions, and I guess at the moment I feel like I'm maybe starting upon like a new period of my video making, which I would like it to be maybe a little bit more qualitative. Not that it has ever been, that's quantitative or that's like rational, scientific, symbolic. But I would like to sort of really keep it as qualitative as possible, and without too much mention except peripheral or additional to the functions. It would be interesting to try to figure out, to what other types do different kinds of INFJ identify. Because I'm pretty sure that depending on the kind of INFJ you are, if you're strong on TI, if you're rather strong on, like really strong on FE or NI and TI, or if your SE is particularly developed, which can happen, with some INFJs, in which case they might almost seem more ISFP-ish in some respects. There's going to be, or ISTP-ish, but more ISFP-ish, I think. There's going to be, that's translating into different types of INFJ, and so I will start with my own example. What kinds of type am I on a daily basis? Because I feel like I have, I think a lot of INFJs are going to, this is going to resonate with a lot of INFJs. I often feel as if I had like different personalities that I wield throughout the day, sometimes even when I'm on my own and I don't really need to portray a certain, not that there's ever any real need for it, but this is kind of an automatic, mode for the INFJ to adapt to its environment and to employ a certain appearance that is not superficial in the sense that it is not part of them. It is part of them, but it's one facet among other facets, equally belonging to the INFJ person, but different facets. Mustering different parts, pushing different buttons as part of the whole framework to manifest a certain appearance, a certain persona, I guess. But here, I guess, the personas are not to be understood as a mask as much as they are as the way in which one presents themselves in that particular situation. Because that's in itself an interesting question which has very deep philosophical roots, and I explore them to a large extent in open monism. Is something that Aristotle said and that Martin Heidegger utilized as well. Like, it's a core aspect of both Aristotle and Heidegger, that when we relate to things in the world and we relate to beings in the world, we never really relate to these beings and things as they are in themselves. The in itself of Kant and Sartre and others, but always as something. So, you can relate to a hammer as a tool. You can relate to a person as a friend, relate as a person as an attractive person you want to get with. You can relate to, a person as an actor. You can relate to, so that's kind of the gist of the idea. Of course, it's a more complicated idea, but that's the gist of the idea. And so that it is, it's something that a more recent movement, very contemporary and very hyped movement in continental philosophy called the speculative realism movement, called correlationism, and it's not exactly what that is, but it's linked to it. And so that's a genuine question. Imagine that you identify as an INFJ. Are you seen by other people always as this INFJ, or are you seen via the prism of a given facet which you are displaying at any given time? Of course, those facets don't have to be functional facets, they don't have to be typological facets, but they can be, you know, behavioral facets. You can be the guy, the party goer, you can be the intellectual, you can be the sulky person, you can be the irascible person, you can be the mysterious person, you can be the wise person, and there's a million potential combinations, and we could even imagine combinations of personas. In any case, the INFJ has this fluid ability to bring about personas, and in this facet or aspect sense, and most of them. And I think depending on the kind of INFJ that you are, the personas, if we limit ourselves right now to the typological personas, are different. So for me, I would say that if I had to think about the personas that I display consciously or not so consciously, or only consciously after the fact of having deployed them unconsciously, you know, there's quite a few of them that are not INFJ, and sometimes it's even quite not deliberate, but I would say I have an awareness of it somehow. And these are the following. So none of them are S personas. I think in Ireland at some point I might have had a little bit of an ESTP persona, but I'm not sure if it was so much a persona as just a manifestation of drunk me. Because I was drunk often in Ireland when I was living there. Not every day, don't worry. But you know, in Ireland, when you go out and you decide to go for drinks, it often ends up being a drunken night. So, no, but with the exception of that, I would say that I don't really identify with S-types as stuff that I manifest or that I relate to. I relate to a certain number of N-types. I relate to the ENFP type. You see, I don't know. I don't know if this is the ENFP type or the ENTP type. I would say the ENFP type more so. It's just that my TI is strong, so it's not like it disappears. But I think that sometimes, depending on the context, depending on the conversation, I kind of play it down a bit. You know, put it on the back burner. And but I kind of manipulate any or what looks like any when being social sometimes. So I relate to the ENFP type. I think that I can have this little persona at times. The ENFJ type, I do not really relate to it, to be honest, with a few exceptions. I think that sometimes in a workplace, if I'm feeling very comfortable and if I've been there for a while and that there are people who are newcomers, I can sort of be a bit ENFJ-ish in my approach. I can utilize FE very well. But what will give away that I'm not really at the end of the day is that, like, in terms of social organization of activities and involvement, I am not as present as an ENFJ probably would be. But still, not as much as the ENFP persona, but the ENFJ persona. Again, persona in this non-negative sense, I should hope. You know, this inner ENFJ or this inner ENFP, I relate to them. More so to the ENFP for this kind of social aspect of things. By myself, I would say I fantasize sometimes about being more ENFP-esque. It's probably based on a projection of an idealization of what ENFPs are like. But it's useful to me when I try to chill a bit more because I'm always so focused on things. And so insist upon finishing everything I do. And, you know, my days are very planned. And sometimes I just fantasize that, you know, I could just be more of an improviser and I would not be bad at improvising. And I fancy myself as an ENFP in these situations. So that's a funny instance too. So much more ENFP than ENFJ for me, I should say. Now, not really like an INFP, to be honest. And I think not really like an INFP just because it's hard for me to conceive of myself as an FI dominant. It's just not something that, you know, I feel like my intuition really dominates my feeling side. And so I don't really identify with the INFP type, nor do I identify that much with an INTP, precisely because, again, the dominant function of an INTP is a judging one. You know, it's not. It overarches the intuition function. I suppose maybe an INTP with strong intuition, which is common. I used to have this identification with the INTP, when, before I realized that it was just a slightly more rational or slightly more logically minded INFJ than the average INFJ. But that was based on a misunderstanding or a caricature of what the INTP is, Now that I know INTPs better, I can see more clearly in what way I'm not one of them, and to such an extent that I could not even really project myself into a persona of one, consciously or not. So, like I said, for the ENTP, sometimes it's not clear to me whether I channel an inner ENTP or an inner ENFP. It's possible that when I say ENFP, it's more ENTP. I just tend to be steeped in my feeler side, but at times my TI can be quite dominant in conversation, I think. So maybe sometimes the ENTP side can come across. And to finish with, last but not least, I would say that a big part of my life is animated by this kind of sense of having a little core of INTJ-ness next to the ENFP-ness and obviously the dominant driving INFJ-ness. And I think, again, it's something I emphasized in my previous video. It has to do with the whole vision thing and this not really steering from a particular end in sight and building incrementally towards it. For example, open monism is something that I've had in mind for years. I'm progressing every day towards it, and I've plans for over the next 10 years or so. But it's not like super planned and detailed yet. That's not really what matters with an NI vision. It's just that it projects itself really long term, and that gives an NI dominant a point of anchor which allows them to project themselves towards the goal and not to get too distracted, not to get too sidetracked. And I'm really sticking to it very, very, I don't want to say religiously, but I'm really doing it. And the vision goes beyond open monism, it's something more complex. And because it is more complex and because I cannot really make full sense of it myself and I cannot really share with other people, to some extent, there's like almost an interplay between not just NI and TI, but NI and FI there. This kind of hidden agenda thing, which, I don't know, I always kind of feel INTJ-ish when that happens. But that was for my perspective on the other types I channel as part of my INFJ identity. I would love to hear you guys share what types do you feel like you are behaving like when as an INFJ, when you're in certain circumstances, whether they're social, whether they're not social, whether they're of a different kind. If you ever experience this out of body and towards into another type's body situation, give us some salacious stories. All right. See you soon, guys. See you next week. Have a lovely end of Sunday. This time I'm not mistaken. It is Sunday, right? Because yesterday I made a mistake. All right. Take it easy, guys. See ya.